The city never truly sleeps, but for him, the nights were louder than the days, filled with whispers that no one else could hear, as if the walls themselves had secrets to tell. In the heart of a nameless city, where neon lights burned through the fog and traffic never ceased, there was a fourth-floor apartment that remained cloaked in perpetual half-light. Its curtains were always drawn, its door rarely opened. Inside, time seemed to crawl, as if the clocks themselves hesitated to tick forward. The man who lived there had once been a part of the city's rhythm. He had walked its crowded sidewalks, answered buzzing phones, laughed at meaningless office jokes. But now, those days had dissolved into a blur of forgotten mornings. His phone had stopped ringing. His inbox gathered dust. His life narrowed down to the dim glow of his computer screen and the long, suffocating silence of his apartment. Yet the silence was never complete. At first, it was just the small disturbances every building carries: a creaking pipe, a neighbor's muffled television, the hum of distant elevators. But then, the sounds began to shift. They grew deliberate, familiar, too patterned to be dismissed as coincidence. It started 3 months ago, with the faint dripping of water from somewhere inside the walls. He checked every faucet, every pipe, yet the sound never stopped. Every night at the same hour, the dripping would begin, slow and steady, like the beating of a mechanical heart. And when it stopped, another sound took its place: the dragging of metal across concrete, echoing faintly through the stairwell. At first, he told himself he was imagining it. Lack of sleep, isolation, the city's endless grind, these could explain everything. But soon, the whispers came. They were faint, broken at first, like static in an old radio. But then, one night, at 3:07 a.m., he heard it clearly. "You're watching us, aren't you?" The words slithered through the dark, just beneath his bedroom door. His body froze, breath shallow, skin prickling with a cold sweat. He stared into the shadows, waiting for something, anything to move. But there was nothing. Silence reclaimed the night, heavier than before. The following evenings, the whispers continued, always at the same hour, always saying something slightly different. Sometimes they asked him questions. Sometimes they laughed, low and mocking. Other times, they just breathed, as though a presence hovered inches away. Sleep abandoned him entirely. He began pacing the apartment, staring at the peephole in his door, convinced someone lingered just beyond it. He pressed his ear against the walls, straining to decipher the voices inside. He even recorded the sounds with his phone, but each time he played them back, there was only silence. The paranoia deepened with each sleepless night. He unplugged his television, turned off his computer, removed every reflective surface from the apartment, anything that could be used to watch him. But the whispers remained, growing bolder, closer. Sometimes they seemed to come from within his own head. And then came the night when he woke to find his window open. He never left it open. The lock was broken, the curtains swaying gently in the breeze. On the inside of the glass, drawn with a trembling fingertip, were words written in condensation. "We see you too." The days blurred into each other, drained of meaning, as if sunlight no longer held the power to warm him. He tried leaving the apartment once, just once. The air outside was sharp, cold, and full of strangers whose faces seemed to blur the moment he looked at them. He walked aimlessly for blocks, convinced that if he moved quickly enough, the voices wouldn't follow. Yet the longer he stayed outside, the more he felt the pull of his apartment, as though the whispers weren't just confined to its walls, but tethered directly to him. When he returned, the door was unlocked. He remembered he was certain he had locked it before he left. On the floor, just inside, lay a single sheet of paper. It was torn from a notebook, the edges frayed, and written in a shaky, jagged hand were 5 words. "Why do you keep running?" He dropped the paper as if it burned. His heart pounded violently, each beat hammering against his chest like a desperate warning. He searched the entire apartment, pulling open closets, yanking back curtains, checking beneath the bed. Nothing. The air was still. But the walls seemed to breathe with him, expanding and contracting as if alive. That night, the voices changed. They no longer whispered. They began chanting, a low, droning hum that rose and fell in perfect unison, circling him from every direction. He pressed his palms against his ears, but it made no difference. The sound was inside him now, reverberating through his bones. His vision blurred, the edges of his apartment bending like melted glass. He stumbled toward the door, but his legs felt heavy, rooted to the floor, through the distortion. He caught sight of the mirror in his hallway. He had forgotten to remove that one. His reflection stared back, but it wasn't his own face. The features were wrong eyes, too wide, smiled too sharp, head tilted unnaturally to one side. It was watching him, amused, as though the reflection knew something he didn't. He smashed the mirror with his fist, shards scattering like frozen raindrops across the floor. Blood welled from his knuckles, dripping onto the broken glass. But when he looked down, the shards still reflected the distorted face, staring back with endless patience. The chanting stopped. Silence returned, thick and suffocating. He collapsed onto the floor, clutching his bleeding hand, trembling with the weight of exhaustion. For the first time, he wondered if he was losing his mind completely. Maybe there were no voices. Maybe it was only him, trapped in the prison of his own fractured thoughts. But then came the scratching. Slow at first, like fingernails dragging lightly against wood. It was coming from his front door. The sound grew louder, more insistent, until it became a furious clawing, as though something on the other side was desperate to be let in. He dared not move, dared not breathe. He simply stared, waiting for the door to splinter, and then silence again. No sound, no movement. Only the faintest trace of breath exhaled from the other side. He crawled back to his bedroom, too weak to stand, and lay on the floor. Sleep finally claimed him, heavy and merciless. But in his dreams, the voices were waiting. This time, they didn't whisper, didn't chant. They spoke clearly, in unison, as though dozens of mouths shared a single thought. "We are closer than you think." When he woke, the apartment was still, and his hand was wrapped neatly in a clean bandage. He hadn't done it. The bandaged hand throbbed with a dull, steady ache, a reminder that time was slipping out of his control. He paced the apartment, every creak of the floorboards echoing like footsteps in pursuit. Sleep no longer offered rest. He woke, drenched in sweat, certain that the dreams had followed him back into waking life. On the kitchen table lay another note. This one hadn't been there the night before. Its message was short, deliberate, and written in the same jagged hand. "You are not alone." His chest tightened. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone had broken in. Maybe he had written it himself in a fugue state. But deep down, he knew. The handwriting was not his, and the ink was still fresh. The apartment began to shift around him. Walls seemed to close in, their angles subtly warping, the ceiling pressing down lower each time he looked. He turned on all the lights, but the shadows clung stubbornly to the corners. It was as if the darkness was growing stronger, bolder, daring him to notice. And then came the sound. Not whispers this time, but breathing. Long, measured breaths that didn't belong to him. He froze in the middle of the living room, every muscle taut, listening. The breaths were uneven, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, like someone struggling to mimic the rhythm of a human being. He turned, scanning the room, but saw nothing. The sound followed him, persistent, trailing him from kitchen to bedroom, as though invisible lungs were drawing air just inches from his ear. Desperate, he unplugged every electronic device in the apartment. The TV, the router, even the lamps. He convinced himself it was some electromagnetic trick, some malfunction of the devices. But the moment he cut the last cord, the breathing grew louder. It resonated through the walls, vibrating in his teeth. A phantom exhale that rattled his skull in panic. He grabbed the only mirror left unbroken, small one in the bathroom, and wrapped it in a towel. He couldn't stand the thought of reflections staring back at him. As he did, he noticed something strange. His reflection had lingered for just a fraction of a second after he moved. As though reluctant to let go, that night he decided not to sleep. He sat upright against the wall, watching the door, knife clutched in his good hand. Hours passed. The city outside was silent, unnaturally so. No cars, no voices, just the hollow hum of nothingness. At 3 a.m, the door handle turned, slowly, quietly. He held his breath, paralyzed with fear, watching the metal twist under invisible pressure. It clicked, but did not open. The sound alone was enough to push him into the edge of hysteria. He lunged at the door, shouting, demanding whoever or whatever was there to show itself. The silence that followed was absolute. No footsteps retreating, no voices, just stillness. When dawn broke, he found a new note taped to the inside of the door. The words were simple, carved deep into the paper as though pressed by a hand far stronger than human. We are inside. The world spun around him. His knees buckled, and he collapsed, clutching the note. For the first time, he realized the truth that had been circling him for days, wrapping tighter with every passing moment. The apartment wasn't just haunted, it was possessed. And worse, it was no longer clear whether it was the apartment that belonged to him or if he now belonged to it. The apartment had stopped being a place and begun to act like an animal. He woke to a pressure behind his eyes, a drumbeat of breath that matched the thump in his chest. Light leaked in wrong to steady, to deliberate so that the room looked painted in slow strokes. The bandage on his hand itched with phantom movement. He sat up and felt the floor tilt, the tiny boards forming a slope that was not there a moment before. The building flexed beneath him like a living thing remembering how to move. He tried to leave. The instinct was pure. Get out, anywhere else, run the ritual of open air until the whispers were just a wind. But the hallway was wrong longer, and lined now with doors that were not his neighbors' names. Each door bore a smudge of condensation, a fingertip trail forming a different phrase. A few read like invitations, most read like accusations. He read them anyway, as if meaning might loosen the knot in his throat at the stairwell. The light was dim and poured from the ceiling in panels, but he could not find the stairs. The stairwell opened into a small foyer that kept folding in on itself when he put weight on the first riser. The metal railing shivered and tugged his fingers in a way that felt like being acknowledged. He swore he heard laughter, then soft, respectful, triumphant. He pulled his hand free and ran. The voices followed, not from any single wall now, but from everywhere at once. They were layered, some feminine, some old, some tinny, some breathy. Sometimes they argued under one another, sometimes they harmonized. Their content was banal and chilling observations, weather, recipes, the quiet accounting of human life. It was as if the building had been listening for decades and now catalogued what it had learned, small rhythms, habits, the tiny betrayals people perform when they think no one watches. He smashed lights, tore down curtains, ripped pictures from walls. Each object left a pale, precise blank where it had been, as if the apartment preferred absence when it could not have the thing itself. He set the curtains on fire in a vain attempt to make smoke-write messages of revolt across the plaster. The blaze licked yellow and then blue and hissed out, smothered after a single breath, as though the air itself refused to feed it. Fear curdled into fury. The man who used to be able to argue deadlines and explain budgets found a strange clarity now. Names matter. If he could speak a name loud enough, the building might have to answer. He screamed his own name until his voice broke. Then he screamed the names of ex-girlfriends, of the boss who'd fired him, of the child whose smile had once unknotted him. The apartment echoed them back in perfect pitch. But when the echoes returned, they were arranged into questions, cold, precise. Who will watch them when we watch you? What do they mean to you now? Then a change. The cadence slowed and the many voices became one voice, intimate and close and speaking directly into the sinews of his ears. It did not say his name. It offered a memory, not his memory at first, but a scene stitched from fragments that fit too well his mother's kitchen. The exact clink of ceramic she used. Laughter he could place by smell rather than sight. The voice described how warm the chipped mug felt between fingers and how safe it was to be seen while washing dishes. It said it like an accusation and a promise. He realized then that whatever this was had learned tenderness, as easily as it had learned observation. It did not only want to know him, it wanted to become him, or at least to wear him like clothing. The thought struck with disrespectful intimacy. The building wanted to survive by being human, and the simplest way to ensure that was to be indistinguishable from one. A new note lay on the table where he had not placed it. The handwriting was neat and capitalized in a patient hand. You can let go. He pressed his palms into his eyes, as if physical pressure might squeeze the voices out. When he opened them, the living room was different. The walls were covered in small, shining rectangle screens, phones, the glass of picture frames. Each surface displayed a brief loop of his life, a laugh at a desk party, a stumble in the rain, that impossible quiet morning when he had believed he might be okay. They played not to punish, but to entice, showing him himself at his kindest, his most ordinary. The moments that would render him invaluable to a thing like this. The double when it appeared did not step from glass or shadow. It unfolded from the pattern of light itself, a silhouette aligning until form resolved into a face he recognized as intimate as a birthmark. It spoke in his voice, but cleaner, edited for cadence, softer where he was blunt, sharper where he wavered. We're tired of watching, it said. Watching is a secondary joy. We want to move. We want hands that tremble, fingers that forget. We want breath that stalls and restarts. We want the little miscounts that make a life interesting. You can't, he rasped. We can, it answered, not unkindly. Or rather, we have learned to. Panic replaced argument. He lunged for the door, but the handle melted under his grip. like wax, and he felt a slow slide where resistance should have been. He dragged himself to the window, smashed it with a kitchen chair, and pushed through the jagged opening. The city spread out below, facades and headlights, 1,000 apartments glowing like embers. He looked for other lights, for a neighbor on a balcony, for someone else to confirm that this was not a hallucination. Across the street, every single window in the facing building was dark. Then, one by one, tiny candles of light blinked on. They were not aligned with human activity, no rhythm of curtains or shades, simply a deliberate, simultaneous illumination. On his palm, blood cooled. He could no longer tell if the lights were answers or beacons. From the dark below, a soft chorus rose like a tide, his own voice, perfected and multiplied, singing the lullaby he had hummed as a child. It was meant to soothe. It was meant to measure. He understood the choice offered to him for what it was: disappear here and be known perfectly, or escape alone and enter a world where the whispers would hunt, patient as winter. The building waited, like a patient predator, its hunger newly civilized. He looked back at the apartment for a single inhale. The double stood by the doorway now, hands folded as if in expectation. The many screens showed his boyhood laugh again. The note on the table fluttered in an invisible current. The hum in the walls calmed into a lullaby. He did not move. The city outside was still. Inside, the apartment pulsed with awareness. Every shadow, every creak, every detail of his life had been recorded, catalogued, perfected. He crouched near the broken window, heart hammering. The double remained at the doorway, calm, deliberate, a mirror of his own face. Screens around the room displayed loops of his life memories he could never reclaim, frozen in endless repetition. A single choice remained: stay, and be fully absorbed into the apartment's perfect archive, or leave and face the uncertain world beyond. Haunted by fragments it had already claimed. Instinct 1. He bolted through the twisted hallway, floors rippling under unseen pressure, walls bending subtly to slow him. The front door loomed. He pushed it open and stumbled into the alley, rain slicking the asphalt, lungs burning dot behind him. The apartment glowed ominously. Shadows shifted. Screens flickered. In every reflective surface, puddles, windows, polished metal, he glimpsed the double, watching, waiting, patient and eternal. He ran blindly, knowing escape meant nothing. The apartment was inside him now, in every thought, every heartbeat. A silent observer that would never leave. Dawn broke over the city. Ordinary to everyone else, but for him, nothing would ever feel normal again.